One particularly big reserve is in the Big Quilcene Basin. That will allow us to actually process a water right for the Quilcene Business Corps. With this rule, we can access that water in reserve through this rule to issue a water right to Quilcene. We will have that on our work plan for this next year, something that is much, much easier to do with this rule in place. That's 2. Number 3, we've heard lots of local interest in preserving and expanding commercial agriculture, and the rule does this has a couple elements. One, we need to protect existing ag uses, so that's one thing the rule does. Second thing is we want to continue working with our partners as the legislature is directed to find new sources of water for ag use and other use. And then the third modification we've made is that we've spent some time, we've identified portions on the northern portions of Jefferson County where there isn't a lot of fish utilization in the summer, so we'd like to expand and have exempt well, up to 5,000 gallon exempt well use for commercial ag. Obviously, 5,000 gallons that's without a water right. Obviously, 5,000 gallons of use isn't much for large-scale commercial farming, but it's a niche. It's a niche business, and we know it's useful for local food production. Okay, that was 3. 4, this is actually an older one. Conservation standard for exempt wells. Original proposal, we proposed 12th of an acre maximum irrigation. For this proposal, it's 500 gallons per day for well use. And this is, the planning unit has recommended that we propose water conservation standards for new exempt wells. That's consistent with some local recommendations. And sort of stepping back from that, in 1945, the legislature created this permit exempt well situation where for both individuals and group withdrawals, like subdivisions, you could have 5,000 gallons of water for exempt well use. They lumped them together. And back in 1945, very little was known about the relationship between groundwater and when you put a well in and what it does to surface water. And obviously, no knowledge whatsoever about endangered species back then, or an endangered species act that would occur 20, 30 years later. So that was number 4. So last one, number 5, this is actually just pointing out a challenge area. Chivicum Subbasin, very watertight basin. And we believe, from the data we've seen, that as there's a very large water right in Chivicum Basin, as that water right is developed, flows will get even lower in that basin. So as a stopgap measure, we're proposing for new development or new wells, in-house use only. Stopgap measure. It's okay. We get it. People go out to a rural area, want to build a home. They don't have the vision of in-house use only. So we view it as a stopgap, and we want to keep working with the community to figure out ways to provide water for outside use. And we are relatively optimistic that we can get there. Okay, those are high points. Anne's going to go through it. I was going to finish off with some of these myths, true or false, because these keep coming up in our meetings. There's no shortage of water in the watershed. Yeah, on an annual basis, we have floods, lots of water in the wintertime. The problem is in late summer and early fall, high use period, very low flows. That's a water shortage time of year. Ecology plans to start charging property owners for their water use. False, right here. We don't have authority for water. Frankly, I would be amazed if the legislature even suggested or even thought about getting